mention is that this is going to be a very important opportunity for us to understand the approach that we're taking as a school district. You know, Eanes is a great district. Every school district is unique and it has its own exceptional circumstances. But every school district, every organization has just a slightly different take on a very serious subject. To provide the context for this subject, because it's so serious, we want to give Dr. Tom Leonard, our superintendent, an opportunity to set the stage, to kind of share with you why we're here today, because we think, and we found this morning, it will be the perfect opportunity to frame the rest of this presentation. So would you welcome Dr. Tom Leonard?
Thanks, Jeff, and thanks to Jeff and his team for all the work they've done, probably from early spring till now, in putting this protocol and this program together. And thank all of you for being here today. I have been working in schools a long time. Some people say probably too long. And I've done a lot of in-services. And I've never felt as conflicted about one as I am about the one we're doing today. I've never felt, this is probably the only in-service in my life that I wish we were not doing. But at the same time, I know we have to do it. So here we are. But I think as we start this, I think it is extremely important that we talk about this in terms of some context, because we all are here for a reason. We went into working in schools at some level because we care about kids. And you can't care about kids unless you care about the safety of kids. It's impossible. And I know you all care about your colleagues, and you care about the safety of those colleagues. And part of what we do today in terms of talking about some of these emergency drills and protocols is so that we can all get on the same page and on the exact same page that law enforcement is on, so that we're learning and working with them. And so, God forbid something does happen, we all have had at least some introduction to what this would be about. You know, I picked a slide to kind of start with, and I wanted to answer this question right away with you. And why are we here? And the reason we're here, in my mind, is that. This goes back to probably my era, when I was a little kid. Be prepared. You know, and part of that being prepared is to understand this, and please listen carefully. There is no possibility that we can ever prepare you for all the scenarios that might take place. Now, people can play the what if situation. We can't do that. But we can do a couple things in terms of being prepared. We basically can do this. We can know the facts, and we can know what best practice is. And on top of all that is we can use some common sense and at times trust our instincts. When you are in the classroom, when you are a coach, you may know your content. You may know best instructional practices, but you know that there are things that happen that you have to adjust on the fly. And there are a lot of decisions that you make quickly, and we can't tell you about all of those. It's impossible. You make them naturally, and you do the best job you can based on the circumstances that you have and what you're thinking at that moment. And you have to keep that in mind when you hear some of the things that they're going to talk to you about today. But we also can never forget about common sense, and what Jeff said, we do trust you. And one of the things we've learned as they've looked at more and more of these instances, sometimes you have to trust your staff's instincts. Some things that people do, sometimes they're doing what they're doing the best they can under really a stressful situation that they were never really totally trained for. So keep that in your mind. Those are shootings that have happened in school just in 2018. And while this is not all about school shootings, there's definitely a piece of this. And I imagine most of you are like me. You're walking down the hall, or somebody comes up to you and they say, "Did you hear what happened in Florida?" Or "Did you hear what happened in Santa Fe?" Or "Did you hear what happened in Virginia?" And I don't know how you react to that, but what happens to me is immediately there's like this pain in my heart. And then as the day goes on and I'm watching the news clips and hearing what they're talking, my mind starts taking over. And I start thinking, what would I have done? How would I have handled that? And that's natural. One thing we have to keep in terms of some context and some common sense, schools are one of the safest places for kids to be. Statistically, that is a fact. They really are one of the safest places kids can be. In some cases, it's a lot safer than the homes that they live in. And that is true. And Washington Post recently did an article, and they threw some statistics out, and we added a few in there. I want to give you some context. We don't want anything bad to happen to anybody ever. But just here are some statistics to kind of keep in the back of your mind to give some context to this. The chance of dying of flu, 1 in 63. Some of us get the shot, some of us don't. The chances of dying from a fall, 1 in 218. The chances of being struck by a comet or an asteroid, 1 in 1.6 million. The chances of being in a plane crash, 1 in 11 million. And I'm going to come back to that in a second. The chance of being struck by lightning, 1 in 94 million. The chance of being involved or experiencing a school shooting, 1 in 614 million. So it is a rare occurrence, and the chances of us experiencing it are pretty rare. That said, in this day and age, we're entrusted with the most valuable thing that this community has, the children, and we have a responsibility to be prepared. And that's part of why we're here. You know, I showed this stat just a second ago. The chances of being struck by lightning is rare, but every one of our schools has a Thor guard. And when that goes off, we know lightning's in the area and everyone moves inside. You don't go outside in a thunderstorm if you can avoid it, right? It's a rare chance you're going to be struck by lightning, but you know what to do and you're prepared and you know how to get off the field when that Thor guard goes on. We know exactly what to do. So we do get prepared. I don't know how many of you took a trip this summer and rode on a plane, but the chances of you being in a plane crash are much higher than the chances of being in a school shooting, but we get on planes all the time. And when you get on a plane, they have learned through experience by looking at different plane crashes what the right protocol needs to be. The protocol you're seeing today and what they're talking about is what the best minds have been able to decipher as to what the best things you can do if there's a school shooting. That's what you're going to see today. When you get on the plane, before it pulls out of the gate or takes off, you see those people. You know, I bet I could hand the mic to somebody and they could probably, if they fly enough, tell me exactly what they're saying. You know, when the airbag thing drops down, you know, what do? You put it on the kid first, right? No, I mean, we all know that. Now, how many people have ever been in a plane where that thing came down? Probably, well, somebody did. Okay, well, it's rare. I mean, it's rare. I've never seen one come down. You know, I never, now, but if it comes down, I know what to do. And they go over that every single time, even though they know the odds of a plane crash are going to be very, very rare. Does that make sense? You know, after 9/11, this happened. TSA, get to the airport 2 hours early, go through there, shoes off, shoes on, all that kind of stuff. We know what we're talking about here. I'm going to come back to this in a second or two as it relates to schools, but it changed the way we operated. okay? So we have all those preparations on the concept of a plane crash. But don't forget that no matter how well that crew is trained, when you're on that plane, you have to trust them, in some cases, to go with their instincts and use their common sense and make a quick decision. You know, when the flight attendants are talking to you, they do not say, "What do you do if birds fly into the engines of the plane while you're taking off on the East Coast in a populated area and stop all your engines?" But that's what this crew dealt with. You land on the Hudson River. Was he right? Was he wrong? Who knows? You know, he did exactly what he thought he needed to do at that instant in time, and in this case, thank goodness, nobody died on this. They got out of the plane, everybody lived, and life went on. But we trust that crew to make those decisions for us. And part of what we're doing today is trying to prepare ourselves a little bit so you'll understand, so it won't be the first time you've heard this or you've heard that, or the first time you've seen what will the police do or what will the SWAT team do when they walk into your classroom. So you'll know a little bit about that. Okay? So you'll kind of live through it a little bit. I want to go through this, and I'm going to say a couple things, and I don't want to get political here, but unfortunately, some people have made this a bit political, but I want to just say a couple of things and try to put this also in context. Some of you may remember that after 9/11, there was a lot of conversation by some about arming flight attendants and arming pilots. And they thought about it for a while, and at some point, they made the decision that it would not be wise to bring a bunch of extra guns onto planes. They made that decision. Now, you can believe what you want to believe, and we can go wherever you want to go, but I'm going to tell you, right now it is our position that we are not arming teachers. We are going to try to keep our environments as weapon-free as we can keep them. You know, even if we gave you all guns and gave you some training, there's Kevlar suits, there's communication devices, you know, it becomes extremely complex when you start really thinking it out. And right now, we're not going down that path. The other piece that I think sometimes gets mentioned, and we just have to use some common sense. We cannot become mini TSAs in all of our schools. First of all, you can see all the people that are involved in this. You know, the x-ray machines, they're going to pull you to the side and the wands, and then they're going to, if that does, something goes off, they're going to frisk you, and, they're going to go through the backpacks, and they're going to check for the explosive, and think about all of that. And even in their situation, and I know they're doing the best they can, there still is a pretty high percentage failure rate in terms of people still getting through, unfortunately, with weapons. In our situation, if we had one metal detector, one of the things you walk through, 3 staff members, the math on that is without checking any backpacks or doing anything of that nature, it will take you 45 minutes to get 1,000 people through it. We can't have kids and staff coming to work 2 hours early to get through the security, and we don't have the people there. And if you line everybody up at this type of a situation, you create a potential for a bad thing happening at that moment in time. Some of the times we're most vulnerable, whether we like it or not, are at the very beginning of a school day and the end of a school day. You know, this high school, you have about 3,000 plus people when you do all the math, coming in and out in about a 15 to 45 minute time period. That's a lot of people moving in and out. And we just have to be realistic of what we can accomplish and what we can't accomplish in terms of that. I'll say this, and I want you to listen to this carefully. We are a school, whether it's this one, our middle schools, our elementaries. We are schools. We have a culture in our schools. We cannot become maximum security institutions. We're not set up to do that, and we don't have the culture. We don't want that culture. We do not need to become that. And so I want you to keep that in mind. That doesn't mean we're not going to do some things. We've already instituted at the main offices a buzzer system technique that we'll wind up using during the middle of the day when people are coming in, and we'll do that. Jeff Arnett and Jeremy Trimble will show you a couple, about 10, 12 different things that we have done. In all likelihood, we will go for a bond in the spring of 2019 that will not raise tax rate in any way, but we will go for a bond. And two of the critical things on that bond will be to enhance the learning environments that we have, and two, to do some common sense, intelligent things that we can do in terms of safety with our facilities that are not intrusive, but will make us a bit safer. And I just want you to keep in mind, we care, but we also have to have some common sense, and we're not going to put you through such a hassle that we are just not, and for no real protection. And I want you to keep that in your mind. So today is about being prepared. It's about hearing from the professionals, seeing what they're going to tell you on how they would operate if something happened. It's a time where you can, again, meet as your staff, think of questions so we can get back to you. And some of the things that they're going to talk about are just being aware and getting used to the same terminology and the same language. So that's why we're here. We're here because we care about the safety of the kids, and we care about the safety of our colleagues. And the more we're on the same page, the better we're going to be. I thank you for your attention today and paying attention to the experts. And I thank you for all the mundane and hard work and trivial things and sometimes the nonsense you go through in doing your job, because I know that's not always fun. But we are so blessed that you're in this room, and I thank you for everything you do. Thank you.
I mentioned just a moment ago that one of the things we want to introduce to you today is our standard response protocol. This is a new take on familiar practices, but it's common language that is being used throughout the greater Austin area, actually throughout the entire state of Texas. But first, we want to show you this slide because it highlights many of the things that have been done since 2017. There are 15 distinct initiatives represented in this graphic that show you all of the things that we are either enacting currently or have already put in place to help protect you and our students. These are all of the measures that we feel are essential to every day making sure that our schools are the safest possible environments. And there are likely more to come. But we wanted to at least begin there to show you that all that we're doing today is really a part of these different initiatives. Our standard response protocol will now be on display in every one of your classrooms. So if something is said, or if you see or hear something, you can refer to this, and we are all working from the same vocabulary. We're all acting according to consistent definitions and responses. And it doesn't just pertain to an active shooter drill. It could be any type of a critical incident. So we know exactly when you hear a particular announcement, what is the teacher's responsibility and what is the student's responsibility. And here to tell us a little bit more about that is our Chief Operations Officer, Jeremy Trimble.
Good afternoon. One thing I want to represent first off is that the SRP, the Standard Response Protocol, so you'll often refer to it as SRP. It's not a replacement for any district plan or program that we already have in place. Okay, this is not replacing anything. What this is doing is creating that common language that we all can communicate in the same way, all of the teachers, the staff, the students, and law enforcement. So if we were in the middle of any critical incident or an emergency, we'd all be on the same page. That's the ultimate goal behind the program. It's a response enhancement program, and it creates that consistent, clear, shared language amongst everyone. Another thing is all these actions that are included in this presentation, this program, they all require everyone to understand what our roles are. Whether we're teachers, we're students, we all have a role in the safety of everyone in this room and in this district. And so this outlines a couple of those responses so we understand what to do just in case of an emergency. So the SRP consists of 5 standard response protocols. And so I'm going to take just the next few minutes, run through some of these. You've heard some of these terms before. Some are new. We want to make sure everyone is on the same page moving forward. So the first is lockout. This is a scenario where there's a threat, there's a danger outside the campus walls. This may be an emergency. Law enforcement may be in the area. There may be an unidentified person or a dangerous animal out on the playground, on an athletic field. And so we want to make sure that everyone is safe inside. So the announcement is going to be lock out, get inside, lock outside doors. All of these actions and directives will be repeated twice over the PA system. That's our ultimate goal in order to communicate the expectations. Also, in a lockout scenario, no one will leave the building and no one will be allowed in the building. But inside the walls of our facilities will still operate normally. We just don't want to make any transactions with anyone in or out of the building until we get clearance from law enforcement. So expectations of you, teachers, and staff, again, bringing everyone inside. Your responsibility are the students. We need to bring those students inside and make sure we take attendance as well. That's going to be a common thread across all of these protocols. And then, of course, our students, they also have expectations. Especially at our secondary levels, we require a lot of them in certain situations. We want them to understand what their response should be. Also, students communicate, inform anyone, any adult, any staff, any teacher of any danger they may see. So we're going to slide into lockdown. This is different because the threat or the danger is inside of our building, inside of our walls. That may be an altercation out in the hallway. This could be an intruder, an active shooter, but this is inside the building. And so what you're going to hear is lockdown, locks lights out of sight. That means we're going to get in our classrooms, we're going to lock the doors, we're going to turn the lights off, and we're going to get out of sight, out of clear view from doors, windows. And we practice this, and this is very important in those type situations we talked about an intruder. Also within this is from the Department of Homeland Security, you may have heard run, hide, fight. That is also included in any type lockdown situation, possibly an evacuation situation. What that means, that's just terminology to help understand, better understand what to do in an emergency. Okay? What law enforcement agencies want us to do is run if we can, hide if we cannot run, and then we're going to fight only if it's completely necessary. And these 3 words, it may change, right? You may hide, but then you get a chance, and then you may run. And so we want to have situational awareness. In just case an emergency, we kind of think of these things. Because the last thing anyone wants to do in this situation is freeze. So think run, hide, fight is kind of what we want to have in our minds in any type of emergency situation. Okay, evacuate. This is a situation, and if you talk to anyone from the elementary session, I had a Freudian slip on this because I told everyone to evacuate in case of a tornado. Don't do that. Do not evacuate in the case of a tornado. So I'm going to get it right this time. Again, evacuation is a situation in which we need to move students and staff from one location to the next. So that announcement's going to be evacuate to the stadium, evacuate to the tennis center. So you're going to hear that over and over multiple times in order to know what the action is and then the directive. So what you have to do is pay attention to not just evacuate. You need to pay attention to where we're evacuating to. That's very, very important with this situation in this protocol. So teachers are the responsibility to lead the students in the evacuation. But this is something new I want to point out. You'll see in red text up there, look, listen, then move. So you may have heard some of these situations that have been going on the last year or so that active shooter. They pulled the fire alarm, and then everyone emptied into the hallways, and then that became a situation that was not favorable for anyone in those classrooms. So what we're asking you, staff, teachers, first, if the fire alarm goes off and it's not a drill, it's not a scheduled drill, look, right? See if there's any danger, see if there's any smoke outside the classroom, and then also listen. Listen for sounds, listen if you heard gunshots, hope not, but just listen and then move. Once you deem it safe environment to proceed in evacuation. But that's something different, some terminology, again, that we want to have in the back of our mind in those certain situations if it's not a planned evacuation. Students, don't bring their phone. Don't pack up your backpack and let's get out of here. And you want to make sure they have their phone for communication purposes. You never know how long we're going to be evacuated. And then shelter. Shelter is when there's a scenarios that protective actions are necessary due to a threat, a danger, and something like this would be, this is where the tornado comes in place, right? We're going to shelter, we're not going to evacuate. We're going to shelter in the case of a tornado, also any type of chemical type spills. And you're going to hear that hazard proceed to the hazard area. Teachers leave safe strategy, take attendance again, and here's some of those hazards: tornado, hazmat, earthquake. Hopefully we don't have to deal with earthquake anytime soon. We have enough to deal with. Lastly, hold. This is a situation where we would announce a hold would be there's, again, an altercation in the hallway. There's a medical emergency out in the hallway. What we want to do is make sure we keep everyone inside the room, normal instructional activities inside that room. We just don't want to go out into the hallway. Take attendance again, and then students remain in the classroom. And all clear will be announced once the hold is over and normal operation can resume. And lastly, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Arnett to cover the reunification. This is another piece of the SRP that's included. Very important, because the number one important aspect of this entire process is the safety of our students, and then safely reuniting them with their parents and their guardians. That's what it ultimately comes down to. So I appreciate your time, and I'm going to hand it back over to Jeff Arnett, and he will take the rest of this. Thank you.
All right. Jeremy, thank you very much. I can't add anything more to that about reunification other than to say it wouldn't necessarily be your responsibility. However, we would absolutely need your assistance. If we find ourselves in the middle of any kind of a crisis on a campus where we have to evacuate students, maybe we have to relocate them to another area altogether, you can imagine the emotion and the chaos in that type of a situation where you have to reconnect students with their parents or reconnect your students with you in the classroom. There is a whole procedure related to that. We won't spend the time on it today, but it is something that you'll be hearing more about later this fall. So that's the standard response protocol. You're going to see it in all of your classrooms. You're going to be hearing about it consistently, and we appreciate your assistance and cooperation to make it successful as we implement it this year.